Hello everyone. I'm Jack. And this is the story of how my new millionaire neighbors decided that laws didn't apply to them, and secretly cut down my 100-year-old oak tree while I was at a funeral. They laughed in my face and threw $500 at me as compensation. They didn't know that I knew about tree law. And the tree they just destroyed was worth $250,000. But before we get to the satisfying ending, you need to understand why I was so angry. I live in a small house. It's not a mansion. It's old, built in the 50s. But it was my grandfather's house. I grew up here. In the heart of this home was the backyard. There stood a giant black walnut tree. My grandfather planted it when he came back from the war. It had been there for 100 years. Its canopy shaded the entire corner. In the fall, the leaves turned a brilliant gold. It wasn't just a tree. It was a member of my family. Everything was peaceful until 3 months ago. The old house next door sold. The buyers? A couple in their 50s. Richard and Karen. They didn't renovate the house. They bulldozed it. And in 3 months, they built a monster. A huge, modern McMansion, all glass and concrete. It was so big it took up almost their entire lot, and its wall was only 6 feet from my fence. The first day they moved in, I was watering my plants. I tried to be a good neighbor. I waved. "Welcome to the neighborhood." I called out. Karen was directing movers. She was wearing huge sunglasses and designer clothes head to toe. She turned to look at me. She didn't smile. She pulled down her glasses, stared at my small old house, and then stared at my giant oak tree. "That tree," she said. "No, hello. No, I'm Karen." "That tree," she repeated, pointing a diamond ring finger at it. "It drops leaves in my yard. You need to take care of it." I was stunned. "Oh, hi. I'm Jack." "Yes, leaves fall in autumn, but I usually rake them." "It's dirty." Richard, her husband, walked out. He was wearing a polo shirt, looking like he just stepped off a golf course. "And it blocks our view. We don't like it." "It's been here for 100 years, I said, trying to stay calm. "It's my grandfather's legacy." Richard scoffed. "Legacy? It's a rotting pile of wood. You should cut it down before it falls on your shack." And they turned around and walked into their mansion. Slammed the glass door. That was our first conversation. And I knew the war had begun. A week later. 7 a.m. on a Sunday. I was asleep. Bang, bang, bang. Someone was pounding on my door like the police. I ran to open it. It was Richard. He didn't apologize for waking me up. He was holding blueprints. "Hey buddy," he said, loudly. "I'm talking to the architect about the pool. We're putting an infinity pool in the back." "Congrats," I said, rubbing my eyes. "But it's 7 a.m. "The problem is," Richard interrupted, shoving the plans in my face. "Your damn tree. The canopy, the shade, it blocks the afternoon sun for the pool. I'm not spending $100,000 on a pool to swim in the shade." "I'm sorry," I said. "But I can't help that. The sun moves." "You can cut it down," Richard said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "I told you, Richard. I'm not cutting the tree. Listen," he lowered his voice, acting like he was doing me a favor. "I know you're struggling. Look at this house. I'll help you. I'll pay to cut the tree. I'll hire the crew. You don't have to lift a finger. And..." He pulled out his wallet. "I'll give you an extra $500. Cash. Take it and go buy some beer." I looked at the $500 bill. Then I looked at his face. The contempt in his eyes was impossible to hide. He thought $500 was a fortune to me. "Richard," I said, my voice hard. "That tree is not for sale. Not for $500, not for $5,000. Don't ever ask again. And please get off my porch. Richard turned red. He stuffed the money back in his wallet. You're an idiot, kid, he hissed. You're standing in my way. And no one stands in Richard's way. You'll regret this. He walked away. I closed the door, my heart pounding. I knew he wasn't making empty threats. Rich guys like this, they aren't used to hearing no. They didn't wait long to make me regret it. 3 days later, I came home from work. I saw a note taped to my door. From the city. Notice of violation, hazardous vegetation. A complaint has been filed stating your oak tree is dead and poses a danger to neighboring property. Inspection required. I had to take a day off work to wait for the city inspector. The inspector, a nice guy named Dave, looked at the tree. He tapped the trunk. He looked up at the lush green canopy. Who reported this? Dave asked. This tree is healthier than I am. It'll live another 100 years. New neighbor, I pointed to the mansion. Dave shook his head. New money. All right, I'm closing the file. Tree's safe. Don't worry. I sighed in relief. I thought that was it. But no. That night. 11 p.m. I had just turned off the lights to sleep. Suddenly, my bedroom lit up like it was noon. Blinding white light blasted through my curtains. I ran to the window. In Richard's backyard, he had installed 2 massive, stadium-grade floodlights. And they were aimed directly at my bedroom window. I saw Richard standing in his window, wine glass in hand, watching. He wanted me to know I did this. I couldn't sleep. I had to tape blankets over the window. The next day, I found trash in my yard. Expensive wine bottles. Cigar boxes. Thrown over the fence. And the next day, Karen started playing opera music. Full volume. At 6 a.m. While she did yoga in the yard. They were playing psychological warfare. They wanted to drive me crazy. They wanted me so tired that I'd say, fine. Cut the damn tree down so I can sleep. But they didn't know me. I'm a middle school teacher. Patience in dealing with bullies is my profession. I bought blackout curtains. I bought earplugs. I told myself, I won't lose. This is my house. This is my tree. The Cold War lasted 2 weeks. And then, tragedy struck. I got news that my aunt in Ohio passed away. She was my only living relative besides my parents, who had passed. I had to go to the funeral. I had to be gone for 3 days. I was worried. Leaving the house empty for 3 days, with those crazy neighbors right next door. I had a very bad feeling. Richard had been quiet for a few days. No floodlights. No opera. That silence was scarier than the noise. Before I left, I decided to do one thing. I went to an electronics store. I bought an outdoor security camera. The best one. 4K motion sensor. Audio recording. And most importantly, cloud storage. I climbed a ladder. I hid the camera under the eaves of my back porch. It was perfectly camouflaged behind the gutter. Its angle covered the entire backyard. And most importantly, it looked straight at the oak tree. I connected it to my phone. I whispered to the tree, "Watch the house. I'll be back soon." I locked up. I dragged my suitcase to the car. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. I saw Karen standing in her second-floor window. She was watching me drive away. And she was on the phone. I shivered. I'm just being paranoid, I thought. They're bad people, but they wouldn't dare break the law. Cutting down someone else's tree is trespassing and destruction of property. They know the law. I overestimated the intelligence, and the morality, of people who think money solves everything. I got on the plane. I turned off my phone. I didn't know that, when I landed, my life would change forever. And my 100-year-old tree was counting down its final hours. I was in Ohio. The funeral had just ended. We were at the reception. It was quiet. I was holding a glass of water, trying to comfort my cousin. And then, the phone in my suit pocket buzzed. Once. Twice. 3 times in a row. I excused myself and stepped into the hall. I pulled out my phone. It was a notification from my security app. Motion detected in backyard. Loud noise detected. My heart clenched. I opened the app. The screen buffered for a few seconds because of the bad signal. Those seconds felt like a century. And then, the image appeared. My blood ran cold. My backyard was no longer peaceful. It was being invaded. Not one person. An army. A massive orange crane truck was parked right on my lawn. They had smashed through my back fence to drive it in. 3 men in safety harnesses were climbing my grandfather's black walnut tree. The sound of chainsaws roared. Ree. The sound transmitted through my phone speaker, distorted but terrifying. And standing at the base of the tree, arms crossed, directing them, was Richard. He was wearing a pristine white tennis outfit. I saw a huge branch, a branch I used to have a swing on as a kid, fall to the ground. Crash. No! I screamed in the middle of the funeral home hallway. People turned to look, but I didn't care. I hit the two-way talk button on the app. Stop! I screamed into my phone. Stop immediately! What the hell are you doing? On the video, I saw Richard jump. He looked around. Then he spotted the tiny camera under the eaves. He wasn't scared. He didn't tell the crew to stop. He smiled. He walked up to the camera. His red face filled my phone screen. "Oh, hey Jack," he said, his voice crackling through the speaker. "Enjoying the funeral?" "Richard. Tell them to stop. I'm calling the police." "Too late, kid," he laughed. "Police say this is a civil dispute. And by the time you get back, it'll be done." He turned to the crew. "Cut it faster. I'll pay an extra $500 if it's down in an hour." "No!" I screamed, helpless. And then, Richard looked right into the lens, and flipped me the bird. He pulled the power cord, or smashed it, I don't know. The screen went black. Connection lost. I stood there, in Ohio, 500 miles from home. Helpless. I knew, when I got home, my 100-year-old friend would be gone. I drove home immediately. I skipped the family dinner. I drove 8 hours straight. I didn't eat. I didn't drink. I just drove in a state of panic and rage. I got home at 10 p.m. The neighborhood was quiet. Streetlights were buzzing. I ran to the backyard. And I fell to my knees. It was gone. The majestic black walnut, taller than the house, the canopy that shaded the whole block, was gone. The night sky looked strangely empty. My backyard looked like a war zone. Sawdust. Mountains of sawdust covered my green grass. Small branches were scattered everywhere. My wooden fence was crushed by the crane. And in the middle of the yard was the stump. A massive stump, over 3 feet wide. Bare. White. Sap was still oozing out, wet, like blood. The smell of fresh walnut wood was thick in the air. To others, it might smell nice. To me, right then, it was the smell of death. I walked to the stump. I touched the smooth-cut surface. My grandfather planted this. My father grew up with it. I kissed my first girlfriend under this tree. And Richard killed it for a pool. I looked over at Richard's house. The mansion was lit up. They were having a party. I heard glasses clinking. Laughter. They were celebrating. They were celebrating on the corpse of my tree. The pain inside me, it compressed. It compressed into a block of dynamite. I didn't call the police right away. I didn't call a lawyer right away. I needed to see his face. I stepped over the sawdust, over the broken fence, and walked into their yard. They were sitting on their marble patio. Richard and Karen. And a few of their rich friends. They were drinking red wine. "Oh, look," Karen pointed. "The little homeowner is back." Richard turned. He looked a bit drunk. He smiled, a smug, victorious smile. "Hey Jack," he shouted. "Come on over. Want a drink?" I walked right up to them. I was covered in road dust, eyes red from driving and crying. They were clean and perfumed. "You." My voice shook, but not from fear. "You killed it." "Correction," Richard said, sipping his wine. "I cleaned it up. Look." He spread his arms, gesturing to the empty space where the tree used to be. "See? Clear view. Moonlight shining right down. Tomorrow, this place will be full of sun. My pool is going to be amazing." "You trespassed," I said. "You destroyed property. You know that's illegal." His friends giggled. Richard put down his glass. He stood up, walking close to me. He was taller, heavier. He tried to use his size to intimidate me. "Listen, kid," he said, his breath smelling of expensive wine. "Don't talk to me about the law. I have a team of lawyers. You think you can do anything to me? Sue me? With what money?" He pulled out his wallet. A thick leather wallet. "I know you're broke. That dump of a house, you're probably drowning in debt." He pulled out a stack of cash. $100 bills. I said I'd pay $500. But because I'm in a good mood. He counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 10 bills. $1,000. Take it. He threw the money at my chest. The bills fluttered down to the stone patio. "Take it, buy a sapling at Home Depot. Use the rest to buy some beer and cry it out. And don't ever, ever bring this up again. This is a lesson for you," Karen added, her voice shrill. "Never stand in the way of people who are more successful than you." I looked at the money on the ground. I looked at Richard's red face. I looked at Karen's sneer. In that moment, I wanted to punch him. I wanted to smash their table. But I remembered my grandfather's advice: never wrestle with a pig in the mud. You get dirty, and the pig likes it. I didn't pick up the money. I looked up. I looked straight into Richard's eyes. "Keep your money, Richard," I said. My voice was so calm it made him pause. "You're going to need it." "Need it for what?" he scoffed. "My pool?" "No," I said. "For your lawyer." I turned and walked away. "Are you threatening me?" Richard shouted after me. "You're nothing. I'm the king here." I walked home. Into my darkness. They thought they had one. They thought $1,000 was a lot. They didn't know. They really didn't know. They just cut down a 100-year-old black walnut. And tomorrow, I wasn't calling the police. I was calling someone much scarier. I was calling the Lorax, the nickname of the best tree law attorney in the state. And I was going to start the process of turning their life into hell, one number at a time. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window, staring at the bare stump in the moonlight. I knew Richard. He wasn't stupid. He knew that stump was evidence. He knew that if the stump remained, experts could determine the age, health, and species of the tree. And just as I predicted, 6 a.m. the next morning, I heard a heavy engine. Not a chainsaw. A low grinding sound. I ran to the backyard. Another truck was parked there. On the truck was a massive machine with spinning blades, a stump grinder. Richard was standing there, drinking coffee, directing. "Grind it to dust," he ordered. I want that spot flat before lunch so we can pour concrete. If he ground the stump, I'd lose the evidence. I couldn't prove the tree was on my land. I couldn't prove it was healthy. I didn't think. I acted on instinct. I ran out of the house. I jumped over the broken fence. And I sat on the stump, right in front of the spinning blades of the grinder. Stop! I screamed. The operator jumped, hitting the emergency kill switch. The blades stopped inches from my legs. Are you crazy? The operator yelled. You want to die? Richard walked over. His face purple. What the hell are you doing, Jack? Get off my land. Your land? I screamed back, gripping the sticky, sap-covered stump. This stump is on my land. You have no right to touch it. I already cut the tree. The stump is just trash. Move so I can work. No, I said. I'm sitting here. If you want to grind it, you have to grind me too. Richard looked at me. He looked at the operator, who was shaking his head, not wanting a murder charge. Fine, Richard said, pulling out his phone. You want to play hard? I'm calling the police chief. He's my golf buddy. You're getting arrested for trespassing. 15 minutes later, a police car pulled up. Not a normal patrol officer. A senior officer. Richard greeted him, shaking hands. Hey Bob. Sorry to call you so early. I got a crazy guy trespassing in my yard, blocking construction. Officer Bob walked into the backyard. He looked at me sitting on the stump, covered in sap and sawdust. Hey buddy, Officer Bob said, his voice condescending. You're on Mr. Richard's property. Get down. This is my property. I argued. This tree was the boundary. He cut my tree and now he wants to destroy evidence. Richard laughed. He pulled out a rolled-up paper. Officer, this is a land survey from 1990 I got from the previous owner. Look. The line is behind the tree. The tree belongs to me. This kid is delusional. That was a blatant lie. Or a fake survey. I knew where the line was. Officer Bob didn't even look closely at the paper. You hear that? Bob said to me. He has papers. You are disturbing the peace and trespassing. I'll give you 3 seconds to step back over that fence, or I'm cuffing you and putting you in the car. I looked at the cop. I looked at Richard's smug, winning smile. I knew I couldn't fight the police. I slowly stood up. I stepped back, onto my grass. Good, Richard said. Now grind that stump. Wait. I yelled. Officer. This is a civil dispute. You can't let him destroy evidence without a court order. Officer Bob looked at me, hand on his holster. I don't see a dispute. I see a homeowner cleaning his yard. If you scream one more time, I'm arresting you for disorderly conduct. And I had to stand there. Helpless. Watching the grinder start up again. Ree. In 10 minutes, the last relic of my grandfather, the 100-year-old stump, was turned into a pile of wood chips. Richard laughed loud. He turned to me, shouting over the machine. See? Money is the law. Now what are you gonna sue me for? No tree. No evidence. After the stump was gone, Richard didn't stop. He accelerated the schedule. He wanted that pool finished this week to celebrate his victory. He hired more machines. Excavators, compactors, concrete trucks. And he ordered them to work right next to my house. Literally right next to it. The pool pit was only 3 feet from my foundation. Day and night, my small, old house shook. Dishes in the kitchen cabinets rattled. Small cracks started appearing in the drywall of my living room. I ran over. Richard. You're cracking my house. The machines are too heavy. Stop. Richard was looking at blueprints with the contractor. "Oh, your house is cracking?" he asked, feigning surprise. "Probably because it's a piece of junk. Or maybe, the ground settled after the tree was gone." "The tree's fault. You are digging too close to my foundation." "My land, I dig," he said. "If your house collapses, I'll buy the lot cheap." "Actually." He stepped closer to the fence. "Why don't you just sell? I'll give you $100,000 for that pile of rubble. You can move somewhere else. This neighborhood isn't for people like you." He was trying to drive me out. He didn't just want the pool view. He wanted to erase my existence because I was an eyesore, a poor guy who dared to talk back. "I will never sell," I said through my teeth. "Fine," Richard shrugged. "Enjoy the noise. Tomorrow I'm running the compactor at 6 a.m. I went inside. The house was vibrating like an earthquake. I knew I couldn't win a direct confrontation. The police were on his side. The city was afraid of him. I needed a nuclear weapon. I went online. I went to Reddit. I went to legal forums. I searched for one single keyword: best tree law attorney in the state. I found a name. Attorney Jenkins. On the forums, they called him the Lorax, the Dr. Seuss character who speaks for the trees. There were legends about him. He made a power company pay $1 million for cutting down a row of pines by mistake. He seized an entire golf course because they cut a neighbor's tree. He was famous for being ruthless, expensive, and hating bullies. I called. His secretary answered. "Mr. Jenkins doesn't take small cases. Consultation fee is $500 an hour." "Please," I said, desperate. "They cut down a 100-year-old black walnut. They ground the stump. They have the police in their pocket. I don't have much money, but I have video." "Black Walnut," the secretary's voice changed. "Send me the video." I sent the clip from the security camera, the one where Richard flips me off and orders the cut. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. A deep, gravelly voice, sounding like bark rubbing together. "This Jack?" "I'm Jenkins." "Yes, sir. I just watched the video. That guy. Richard, did he really laugh when the tree fell?" "Yes." "And he ground the stump to hide it?" "Yes." "This morning." There was a silence on the line. A scary silence. Then Jenkins spoke. "I hate people like Richard. I hate people who think money can buy nature. But Mr. Jenkins, I don't have money for the fees." "Don't worry about the money," he growled. "I'm taking this on contingency. I only get paid if we win. Because from what I saw in that video, we're not just getting the tree money. We're taking his pool. Meet me tomorrow morning. Bring every paper you have. It's time to teach that rich jerk a lesson in photosynthesis." 9 a.m. the next morning. I was waiting outside. Richard was in the next yard, yelling at the pool crew. He looked triumphant. A black, shiny Lincoln Town car pulled up in front of my house. The door opened. A man stepped out. He wasn't what I expected. Attorney Jenkins, the Lorax, was short, stout, with messy white hair and thick horn-rimmed glasses. He wore a suit that looked expensive but old, and carried a battered leather briefcase. But his eyes were sharp as razors. Behind him were two other men, a surveyor, with laser equipment, and a man in a jacket that said forensic arborist. "Hello, Jack," Jenkins said, skipping the handshake. "No time to waste. Where's Richard?" "Over the fence," I pointed. Jenkins nodded. "Good. Get to work, boys." His team immediately walked into my backyard. The surveyor started shooting lasers. The arborist started digging into the sawdust pile. Richard saw them. He ran to the fence, face red. "Hey! What the hell?" he screamed. "Who gave you permission to dig here? Get lost." Jenkins walked slowly to the fence. He pulled a paper from his battered bag. You must be Richard, Jenkins said, voice low and calm. Doesn't matter who I am. I'm calling the cops. Go ahead, Jenkins said. But before you do, take this. He handed the paper over the fence. This is a court order for emergency preservation of evidence. And this is formal notice that you are the defendant in civil suit number 4022. Richard held the paper, hands shaking slightly. Lawsuit? Over a damn tree? I ground it up. There's no evidence left. Jenkins smiled. A smile that chilled my blood. Oh, Mr. Richard. You think a tree is just the stump above ground? You ground the top, but you forgot the bottom. He pointed at the ground. The roots. The DNA. And most importantly, satellite imagery. Richard choked. Now, Jenkins said, voice hardening. Step back and let us work. And if you interfere, I will add obstruction of justice to your very long list of charges. Richard stepped back. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. All morning, my backyard turned into a CSI crime scene. The forensic arborist didn't need the stump. He dug deep. He found the root system. Look at this, he said, holding up a root as thick as a thigh. Still fresh. Sap running. North American black walnut. One of the most expensive woods in the world. He bagged samples. We'll run DNA to confirm species and health. But at a glance, this tree was fit as a fiddle. No rot. Meanwhile, Jenkins opened his laptop on my kitchen table. Richard thinks he's smart, Jenkins said. He thinks no stump means no measurements. He opened Google Earth Pro. This is satellite imagery from last month. High resolution. He zoomed in. The black walnut tree appeared clearly, its massive canopy covering my yard and part of Richard's. We can use software to calculate the exact canopy diameter, tree height, and derive the trunk diameter. Jenkins typed away. Estimated trunk diameter, 42 inches, over 1 meter. Height, 80 feet. He turned to me. Jack, do you know what veneer-grade black walnut lumber goes for right now? I have no idea. At this size, just the raw lumber value alone is about $30,000. Richard didn't just kill a tree. He stole a valuable commodity. But that's just the start, Jenkins said, eyes gleaming. In tree law, we don't calculate lumber price. We calculate replacement cost. How do you replace a 100-year-old tree? Exactly. You can't replace it with a sapling. You have to calculate the cost of the largest transportable tree possible, plus aesthetic value, shade value, and history. He wrote a number on a paper. $78,000. This is the base value of the tree. Then he wrote X3. And because he acted willfully and maliciously, based on your middle finger video, this state allows 4 treble damages, triple damages. $234,000. Plus legal fees. Plus fence repair. Plus repairing your house foundation cracked by his machines. Jenkins closed the laptop. We are suing him for $300,000. And we will win. 3 days later. Richard was still trying to build the pool. He thought the lawsuit was a bluff. He had poured the concrete foundation and was prepping for tile. Wednesday morning. A sheriff's vehicle pulled up. Not his buddy Officer Bob. A court process server. They were with Jenkins. They slapped a bright orange sticker on the construction gate, and another on the excavator. Preliminary injunction, stop work order. Richard ran out, pale. What is this? Jenkins stepped forward. Mr. Richard. The court has ordered an immediate halt to all construction on this lot until the boundary dispute and property damages are resolved. Are you crazy? The concrete is drying. I have to finish. No, you don't, Jenkins said coldly. And one more thing. He handed Richard another paper. We just filed a lease pendens, notice of pendency of action, on your property title. What does that mean? It means, Jenkins smiled, you cannot sell this house, you cannot refinance, and you cannot take out any more loans against this property until the lawsuit is over. Your assets are legally frozen. Richard stumbled. I knew, from overheard arguments, he was using bank loans to build this pool. If the money stopped flowing, he was in big trouble. You. Richard pointed at Jenkins. I will hire the best lawyer in the city and crush you. Do that, Jenkins said. I like opponents with money. Their checks clear faster. A week later. Mandatory mediation. We sat in a fancy conference room. Me and Jenkins on one side. Richard, Karen, and their lawyer on the other. Their lawyer was a slick guy in a shiny suit, looked more like a real estate agent. All right, Richard's lawyer said, arrogantly. Let's end this nonsense. My client admits to over-pruning. We are prepared to offer a goodwill settlement. He slid a check across the table. I looked at the number. $5,000. Richard smirked. There. 10 times what I offered. Take it, buy a new tree, and drop the suit. Jenkins didn't even look at the check. He looked at the lawyer. Do you specialize in property law? Jenkins asked. The slick lawyer paused. I'm Richard's corporate attorney. Figures, Jenkins said. You don't know what you're doing. Jenkins opened his bag. Pulled out the arborist report. The satellite photos. The state statute on willful destruction. He slid the stack toward Richard. Here's our offer, Jenkins said. 1. Tree damages, $234,000. 2. Foundation repair for Jack, $40,000. 3. Legal and expert fees, $25,000. Total, $299,000. And, Jenkins added, Mr. Richard must issue a public apology. Richard laughed. A loud, echoing laugh. You're insane, he screamed. $300,000 for a rotting log? I'd rather burn the money than give it to this pauper. He stood up. See you in court. I will bury you. He and Karen stormed out. Jenkins looked at me. He wasn't worried. He just made the biggest mistake of his life, Jenkins said, sipping water. He thinks a jury will like an arrogant millionaire bullying a poor teacher. Just wait. 2 months later. Trial day. I walked into the county civil court. I wore my only suit, the funeral one. Jenkins was there, same old suit, same battered bag. On the other side, a different scene. Richard and Karen were there. Wearing expensive designer clothes. Richard had a gold Rolex. Karen had pearls. And their lawyer? Not the corporate guy. Richard had hired a shark. A famous city litigator with a bleached smile and a $5,000 suit. They looked at us like we were bugs to be squashed. Judge Miller entered. Stern woman, white hair. Jury selection began. Richard's lawyer, Sterling, tried to remove anyone who looked poor or nature-loving. He wanted businessmen, people who valued property rights. But Jenkins, he was a master. He didn't pick tree lovers. He picked people who hated bullies. He picked an old schoolteacher. A plumber. A nurse. Hard-working people. Sterling's opening statement was eloquent. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a case about property rights. My client, a successful businessman, simply wanted to improve his land. He is being extorted by a greedy neighbor over a dead tree. Jenkins stood up. Slowly. Like an old tree. He didn't talk about law. He talked about time. 100 years, Jenkins said, his voice deep. That's how long that Black Walnut stood. It was there before Richard was born. It was there through 2 world wars. It sheltered 3 generations of Jack's family. And Mr. Richard took 30 minutes to kill it, because he wanted a tan. I looked at the jury. The old teacher was nodding. Richard took the stand. He was confident. Rehearsed. Lawyer Sterling, Mr. Richard, did you know the tree was on Jack's land? Richard, no. Based on an old survey, I truly believed it was mine. Or at least on the line. I thought I had the right to trim it. Sterling, and did you offer compensation? Richard, yes. I'm a good neighbor. I offered to pay for cleanup and give him extra cash. He refused and got aggressive. He was acting well. The misunderstood generous neighbor. Jenkins' turn. He walked up, holding a remote. Mr. Richard, Jenkins asked. You say you believe the tree was yours? Yes. And you acted in good faith? Of course. Then why? Jenkins clicked a button, and the courtroom screen lit up. Did you do this? The video from my security camera played. The courtroom went silent. They saw the tree being cut. They heard me scream, "Stop! That's my tree!" And they saw Richard walk up to the camera, smirk, and flip the bird. Jenkins froze the frame. Richard's middle finger, huge on the 60-inch screen. Mr. Richard, Jenkins said, voice hard. Is this the universal sign for good faith in your business circles? Richard turned red. He stammered. I was provoked, he was yelling. And this, Jenkins played the clip of Richard ordering, cut it faster. I'll pay an extra $500. You knew Jack was objecting. You knew there was a dispute. But you paid extra to destroy it faster before he could return. That is not a mistake, sir. That is willful destruction. The jury looked at Richard. Their eyes had changed. Disgust was plain on their faces. After 3 days of trial, the jury deliberated. They came back in 2 hours. I held my breath. I gripped Jenkins' hand. Judge Miller read the verdict. In the case of Jack, last name, versus Richard, last name, the jury finds the defendant guilty on all counts: trespass, destruction of property, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. As for damages, the judge continued. Replacement value of the Black Walnut, $78,000. Because the act was deemed willful and malicious, the court awards treble damages. The damages for the tree are $234,000. Richard's jaw dropped. Karen started sobbing. But it wasn't over. Foundation repair, $40,000. Legal and expert fees, $35,000. Total judgment against the defendant, $309,000. The gavel banged. Bang! Richard stood up. He lost it. This is a joke, he screamed. I'm not paying. $300,000 for a tree? You're all crazy. Bailiffs had to step in, forcing him down. I looked at Jenkins. He just smiled slightly, closing his file. Done, he said. Winning in court is one thing. Collecting is another. Richard vowed to appeal. He said he wouldn't pay a dime. But Jenkins was ahead of him. The next day, Jenkins filed the judgment with the county recorder. He turned the verdict into a judgment lien against Richard's McMansion. And that's when the dominoes fell. Turns out, Richard wasn't liquid rich. He lived on debt. The mansion was heavily mortgaged. And the pool? It was funded by a construction loan. When the bank saw a $309,000 legal lien hit the property title, they panicked. They froze the construction loan. The pool contractors, not getting paid, walked off the job. They left a giant, jagged hole in Richard's backyard. 2 months later, Richard couldn't refinance to pay his debts because of my lien. Interest rates hiked. His business suffered, news of the trial got out, nobody wanted to work with an environmental vandal. He started missing mortgage payments. Month 4. I saw a tow truck. They repossessed Karen's Mercedes. Month 5. Their power was cut for 2 days. And month 6. The moment I was waiting for. A sign went up in their yard. Not a normal for sale sign. A foreclosure auction sign. The bank had seized the house. To sell the house, the bank had to pay off all liens. And the first lien on the list, after taxes, was my judgment. The bank sent me a check. The full $309,000. Richard and Karen? They were given 24 hours to vacate. I stood at my window, watching them load boxes into a rented U-Haul. No luxury cars. No designer clothes. Richard looked up at me. He looked 10 years older. He started to say something, then stopped. He looked down, got in the truck, and drove away. They lost their dream home. They lost their reputation. They lost everything. All for a tree. I stood in my backyard. With the $300,000, I fixed my foundation. I painted my entire house. I paid off my mortgage. I wasn't rich, but I was free. And most importantly, I called the arborist back. I want to plant trees, I said. We couldn't replant a 100-year-old tree. But we planted 3 black walnut saplings, 12 feet tall, along the property line. They were small. But they would grow. A week later, new neighbors moved into the mansion next door, bought cheap from the bank. A young couple with 2 kids. The husband saw me watering the saplings. He walked to the fence. "Hi," he said, smiling. "I'm Tom. Nice trees." I smiled. "Thanks. They're black walnuts." "Awesome," Tom said. "I hope they grow fast. We need some shade back here. It's too sunny." I exhaled. "Don't worry," I said. "They'll grow. And I'll be here to protect them." I looked up at the blue sky, where the old canopy used to be. I felt my grandfather smiling. The lesson? Never underestimate a man and his tree. And if you're a rich neighbor who thinks money is the law, remember Richard. Because in the war between money and nature, with a little help from tree law, nature always wins.